Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest in a series of videos from ARIE Capital, where we are focusing on our EIS Technology Fund for 2022. Now, one of the things that we're always focused on here at ARIE Capital is how to work most closely with the founders and the startups that we invest in and add as much value as possible to them to help them really fulfill their growth potential and grow as much as possible in an organic way. And to that end, we're really delighted to have partnered with Catax for our latest fund. Now, Catax is the UK's largest independent growth funding consultancy, and I'm delighted to welcome Richard Armstrong, who's one of Catax's directors, who's taking a few minutes to speak to me today about what they do over there. So hi, Richard. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Ricky, and everybody else that's listening.
Now, I know one of the main areas that Catax focuses on heavily is research and development, R&D. I must admit, when I first got into tech and the investing side of things, I thought that R&D was really reserved for deep tech and medical companies, but turns out that a lot more small businesses and startups conduct R&D than I'd originally thought. Can you talk a little bit about what R&D means to you and how Catax works in that area?
Yeah, thank you, Ricky. And as you're absolutely right to say, R&D is much more than those companies that have men in white lab coats. R&D is a global tax relief legislation, and it applies to those companies which take a commercial risk in trying to develop a product, a process, or it can actually be for a company that has no manufacturing facility, but develops an unusual IT system. So it is absolutely, as you rightly say, much wider than what we first originally think. In a bit more detail, this is a global tax relief legislation, and the legal language says that R&D sits in a limited company that take this commercial risk in developing something that's unique, or you're appreciably improving a current product that's available, or a process that's available, or it can be in, say, this IT system as well. So it's unique, appreciably improved, or you duplicate the effect of. That's a large amount of legalese language. So in day-to-day language, what we're looking for are those limited companies that basically invest money in something that might work, it might fail, or it might be successful. And if it is successful, then there would have been some sort of challenge where the answer wasn't readily available for the competent professional that's perhaps been doing this type of work for many years. So we look at projects, and that really is the starting point for looking for R&D activity within a business.
Thanks, Richard. I think it's interesting that a lot of companies out there are actually doing R&D without realizing that they're doing R&D. And they're potentially missing out on some of the benefits that are associated with that. So that's something that ARIE and Catax together can really help them with. Now, I've been doing this for a few years myself. One thing that I'd never really heard of until I started talking with Catax is Patent Box. But I saw that Patent Box is a big area of activity for Catax. Maybe you could explain a little bit more about what that means and what you guys do in that area as well for us, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So Patent Box is another legislation which came out about 12 to 13 years ago. What it was aiming to do was trying to get those companies which had done R&D work to then consider actually getting a patent for a product which they make or a process that they make. And Patent Box, in effect, means that a company will only pay 10% corporation tax rates rather than the standard 19. But the good news is that this lasts for the duration of the patent, which is typically 20 years. So there is massive benefits in having a Patent Box tax relief against obviously the patented product or process that you get. The only caveat here is that to benefit from Patent Box, the company must be profit making from that particular patented product or process. It can be loss making in other areas, but as long as the patented product or process is generating a profit, then the company can benefit. So a very much underused legislation, but certainly something that a company has got a patent or is considering one should absolutely talk to us about.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I think that's a really important point because the whole area of patents is really vital for every startup to consider. For us as an investor, when we're investing into a company and analyzing them, we always look at what's that moat, what's the IP protection that they have that creates a barrier to entry for around them and for their competitors. And a patent is a big part of that. But also, as we know, a lot of startups are put off trying to apply for a patent because of the money involved and the costs and a few other obstacles and everything like that. So I think any help that can be given in the area of patents is really something that every small business and every investor should explore. And so far we've talked a lot about tax reliefs and things that are more sort of investor centric, but I know that at Catax, like us at ARIE, you work closely with founders, and let's just cut to the chase. What every startup needs is money. And I think one of the areas where you guys are most helpful is in the area of grants. So maybe you could bring it all together and talk a little bit about how you help founders and startups access some of the grants and some of the money that's out there that maybe they're not even aware of, or they have trouble accessing themselves.
Yes, of course. So far, we've spoken about tax relief for R&D and for Patent Box. In other words, a company would spend the money and then get a percentage of it back. Typically, if you spend about £100,000, you're going to get about £25,000 back if you're a profit-making business, or around about 19,000 for every 100k of expenditure if you're loss-making. But that's R&D and Patent Box tax relief. Opposite to that is grants. So a lot of people would be aware of standard grants in the UK and across the EU, sort of things called SMARTs or Innovate grants. However, there are many other grants which are available, but obviously a lot of companies don't know about. So what I would propose to a company that is looking, particularly startup phase here, is if you are at the point of looking at trying to develop a product, or you're the early stages, the embryonic stages of that, do talk to Catax about grants available to you. And we'll look to see whether or not we can put an application in and process it for you.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, because from our experience, what founders really want to be doing is growing their business and working on their ideas. Most small startups, especially at early stages, just don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to be out there exploring every single grant or every single opportunity that might exist. There's such an amount of information that it's quite overwhelming, I think, in a lot of circumstances. But at the same time, they could be leaving money on the table. And I think that's something that between ARIE and Catax, we can really help them make sure that they're maximizing all the benefits that are out there. So from a practical point of view, what do you think is the best way for a founder to start this process of taking advantage of some of the grants that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, as you rightly say, I think a lot of people can get confused about so much information. So for me, the benefit of having ARIE Tech, ARIE Capital involved along with Catax is a unique proposition. And to find out more, just have an exploratory conversation. Typically, less than half an hour, we'll be able to know which of these legislations are going to benefit the type of client that we're talking to. So it really is a big opportunity with a specialist like ourselves, with you that obviously are investing in these types of companies. Great proposition, and within half an hour, who knows, it could be that we're talking about being able to benefit these clients with a large amount of money which they didn't realize that they were able to get. So it's quite easy, simple benefit, talk and explore. There we go.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're highlighting in a very practical way how we can really help founders and startups make sure they're leaving no stone unturned, and how we can work with them to help them maximize their growth potential. So, Richard, thank you so much. I feel like I've learned a ton in just the last few minutes of chatting with you, and we're really excited to be working together with Catax. For anybody out there that wants to learn more about the ARIE Technology EIS Fund for 2022 or about Catax, we will put up all the contact information and websites right after this. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you soon.